Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Social Justice Cluster of the AEPF, the webinar that we are organizing today, which is essentially on housing. And just to start and to introduce myself, I am Meena Menon, and I am co-convener along with Francine Mestrom of the Social Justice Cluster of the AEPF. So just a brief introduction to the AEPF. It is an interregional network of progressive civil society organizations from across Asia and Europe. And since 1976, it has been working to consistently to link Asian and European NGOs and social movements. It is committed to fostering people's solidarity for a social and economically just, inclusive, peaceful, sustainable, and ecologically sensitive development within and across the two regions. The APF gathers around the time of the ASEM, or the Intergovernmental Asia-Europe meeting, normally. And the next AEPF, however, is going to be a virtual one. The dates are May 17th to 24th this year. And the topic will be People's Forum for a Just, Peaceful and Sustainable World. So this is a little bit about the AEPF. This webinar is being organized by the Social Justice Cluster, and we have been focusing considerably on the whole area of social protection. And we consider that the right to decent housing is an integral part of the social protection systems. It is a basic human right, and housing must be liberated from being a market product meant solely for creation of assets, and instead should be a basic human right, which means that we need to focus on public and social housing, on access to land, on access to all kinds of civic and public services, all of which are critical for the provision of decent housing for all. So just to introduce the webinar, I'm going to introduce the moderator for our session. This is Cesare Ottolini, who is from Italy, and he is the global coordinator for International Alliance of Inhabitants. International Alliance of Habitants is a global network of grassroots organizations and locally based social movements committed to defend the right to housing and to a city without frontiers. He is associated with the movement on eviction and housing for over 2 decades. Over to you, Cesare. And I just want to say that our back-end coordinator is Kathy, who will be helping us with the seminar. She works with the communications the group in the APF. And it's Chandan, who will be coordinating the back-end insofar as timekeeping. He will tell you when you are speaking for too long. Welcome to all the panelists and to all the attendees. We hope to have a lot of questions from you and to keep enough time for discussion. Thank you. Cesare.
Good morning, and thank you for organizing this important webinar. The situation we should debate is about how address or try to address the housing crisis thanks to the support of different stakeholders, mainly the social organization. So the question is for all the panelists, but also for the audience, for the people that are struggling daily for the right to housing and to the city. The panelists today are very important people engaged from a very long time on that issue. And I'd like to understand what are their not only question, but proposal for solution. The right, the time is right, because there are the global pandemic, but it's not a crisis because the pandemic, but the pandemic unveiled the crisis, the structural crisis of the neoliberal policy. So what are the proposition to go out not only from the crisis, but from the neoliberal politics? So all the people have 15 minutes to intervene. there will be the floor for the people asking and questioning. So please note your question and send to the panelists. And I think in the next 2 hours, we will have the opportunity to advance. It's important to build together in this dialogue inside the region, but also thanks the contribution from other region, how go out supporting and implementing the right to housing and the right to the city. So the first panelist, if I'm not wrong, is Kirti Shah. Kirti Shah is a noted right activist of India and a globally noted thinker on urbanization. He's an architect and a chairman on KSI Design, an Ahmedabad-based firm on practicing architects with projects in various parts of the country south. But he was also the president of the Habitat International Coalition, the world's largest coalition of habitat professionals working on issue of housing rights and the sustainable urban development. He is also the founder, president of India Habitat Forum and active member Asian Coalition of Housing Rights. Kirti, the floor is yours. Please go ahead in the next 15 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Cesare. Thank you, Asian Europe People's Forum. And thank you, Minaji, and everyone else for this very interesting opportunity. Of course, I'm very delighted to meet my old friend and my lost friend, I think, Cesare Ottilini, after a long time. We worked together for a long time with Habitat International Coalition. And as I prepare to speak, I think I have a great memory of time we spent together talking and, of course, fighting. I must start by saying that I feel very privileged to represent Asian Coalition of Housing Rights, especially Social Somsuk Bunyabanka, its secretary, as a close friend for the last 30 years. She is inspiring in her commitment and relentless fighter for the cause of the urban poor. The Asian Coalition for Housing Rights, in my view, is one of the most committed and innovative regional network of Asia. It believes in people, especially poor people, and has fought for giving voice to the people for a long time. It has brought people's issues on surface time and again, and through its very interesting program called Asian Coalition for Community Action, ACA. It has worked in 19 countries, 250 cities to bring in the whole idea of cities without slums and citywide slum upgrading. I also must very quickly mention its work in Community Architects Network, where young people are getting committed to societal causes. And I must also mention its work on poor defining poverty line, where the poverty measurement is done through participatory bottom-up processes. ACHR is one of the most innovative organization I know, and I think when we want to kind of find more time and energy to kind of introduce ACHR to people in India, I hope to find that opportunity. Now, today's topic is housing solution, sustainable urbanization, and right to the city. Now, this is a very big subject. It has many aspects, and it could be approached in multiple ways. It could be seen in micro and macro framework. It could be seen in top-down and bottom-up fashion. It could be seen from the perspective of the city administration and citizen, and it also could be seen in today and tomorrow's context. I have decided to do it in what I'd say is an ACHR way. I have worn ACHR hack today, and I'm very keen to kind of represent ACHR's thinking in this particular meeting. Now, and therefore, I'm talking about some of the key issues that ACHR has picked up and canvassed and worked on for the last 25, 30 years. I'm essentially talking about urban land issue. I'm saying that I want to emphasize that urban land matter is critical if you want cities without slums, if you want inclusive cities. I'm also taking a position that state intervention is absolutely inevitable, at least in the Indian context, in most of the South Asian countries. If you really want land to be delivered, market will not be able to deliver land to the people. I'm also saying that, at least in the Indian context, in some halting ways, in slow manner, in a non-visible manner, the state intervention in land distribution is happening. And I'm also saying that citywide institute slum development is an answer to the problem of slum dwellers, answer if you are looking for cities without slums. Now, let me kind of come to the first part, and that is this: that if you're looking for housing for the poor, if you're talking about improving slums and conditions of living in slums, if you want to ensure cities without slums, if you're talking about inclusive cities, healthy cities, people-centered, people-caring cities, if you're talking about urban informal sector which is productive in villages, if you are talking about urban poverty issues to be addressed, if you're talking about urban economy to thrive, if you want jobs to be created, and if you want public transport to work, for all these things to happen, land issue is critical. Without handling the land matter, we are not, and that handling land matter creatively, imaginatively, and justly, we cannot achieve any of the above thing that I mentioned. And therefore, for better cities, for livable cities, for inclusive cities, we've got to kind of think about managing land. Now, what is this aspect of managing land? Now, what is happening is this: that as city country urbanizes, as cities grow in population size, as economic activity intensifies, as cities become engines of economic growth, if cities become center of globalization, if competition for investing capital intensifies at the international and global level, uh, uh, land becomes increasingly scarce, increasingly expensive, and increasingly unaffordable. And this works both ways. If you're looking at cities as residential places, or if you're looking at cities as an economy. And this is important to recognize that if we want land to come, will require effort and policies and program. Now, what is happening is this: that if land is in short supply, if land is getting scarce and expensive, that is because land is become FSI, floor space index, it becomes artificially multiplied. It increases use to finance infrastructure. As a matter of fact, everyone at the World Bank and ADB is talking about land value capture in order to kind of finance urbanization. And not only that, land is also a way to become personally rich and affluent. And therefore, if all this is happening, it's very hard to think about land in its social application, in its public good, because it is serving huge amount of private purpose. In that context, that what this one is saying, that if land is so critical, if land is so important, if land must be made available, it's very difficult to imagine that land will be delivered by market. Market will not be able to be delivered lands, and therefore state intervention is something which is very essential in the context of land delivery. Now, what do we mean by state intervention? And at least in the Indian context, I'm very keen to show how has it happened over a period of time. And I just wanted to give 5 examples of land state intervention in land coming to people not only in the manner in which one wants, not only at the scale is required, not only I think in the manner in which it should happen, but point I'm trying to make is this, that it is happening, and that is this. First thing that one would remember in the Indian context, and even though I'm talking about is from SCHR point, I'm talking about Indian condition. Urban Land Ceiling Act happened in 1976. It was such a radical act that couldn't believe. Even though it didn't deliver, it didn't succeed. It did exactly opposite of what it was supposed to do, but it happened. And if you look at the objectives, very interesting. I was just looking at this last night. It was supposed to, I think, make land available at affordable rates. Under Urban Land Ceiling Act, there was no land which was supposed to be costing more than 10 rupees a square yard. It was supposed to prevent excessive profiteering of in land. It was supposed to kind of have stop land hoarding. It was supposed to make land available for balanced urban planning and city development. And in state like Gujarat, as a matter of fact, there was a vacant land tax so that people do not hoard land. That was Urban Land Ceiling Act. It didn't deliver, but there was a political will. It happened. Then, of course, we had sites and services. Now, under sites and services, which land was made available, in fact, service land made available at places where there were jobs and employment. Then we had environmental improvement in slums, where we did not, what we said that if the land is not required for development for 10 years, you could really provide services to those slums where people were living. And then we had Pata distribution program, which happened in states like Andhra Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, and Rajasthan. And and the fifth thing that I want to talk about is something which is happening now in an incredibly interesting fashion in Orissa. This is through Jaga Jaga project in Orissa, where government has taken a very interesting position, where Chief Minister made a statement. He said, "Are we talking about eviction or empowerment?" And he said that we are opting for empowerment, and therefore we are going to kind of provide land to our people. And in that context, they have designed fairly large scale project to provide secure land tenure to slum dwellers. This is happening in thousands of places. This is happening not only in the project context, it is happening through a policy initiative. State government has made policy. Large number are involved. They're providing secure land tenure. Municipal corporations are being capacitated to provide services. They also are supporting improving shelter conditions by people. There's a community engagement processes which are very wide, and there is strategies for integration of and mainstreaming of slums. And this particular project, as a matter of fact, shows a lot of promise, something to learn from, something to scale up, something to kind of replicate. I also wanted to make very quickly how is this happening? And I just wanted to mention there are 6 ways in which this is happening. One, obviously, is a political process, be that forward catching, be that on humanitarian consideration, be that as part of good governance, um, or be that as part of developmental action. A political process is doing this. Second thing which is delivering is the legislative process, which says evictions are not allowed, which talking about R&R policies. It's also happening through judicial activism. And in India, this is long for last 20, 30, 40 years, starting from cases in Mumbai to continuously, I think, now in terms of how do you prevent it. It's also happening through grassroots movement. We've known about this for a long time. It is also happening through it's also happening through master planning processes in terms of land reservation, and it is happening to through public housing program. Like we may not know. Just one more minute. In India, we essentially are talking about large program. If country is building 20 million houses under Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, essentially meant for the poor people, it essentially is making land available. So this multiple strategies that I talked about is something that needs to be examined if we really want to see that the poor have right to to housing, they have right to city, they have they are able to pursue, and this is not to be seen as the final solution. This is an interim solution. If we really provide people a place in the cities, they will work hard, they will prosper, they will become citizens, and they will ensure that they are able to contribute meaningfully to the city, and they are able to contribute meaningfully to their own growth and development. That is the way in which ACHR has seen for a long time, and I thought I'll use this opportunity to share this with people who are here in this particular meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kirti. Unfortunately, the time is a tyrant, but I will the opportunity to reply to the question. Please, the people ask on the box. Thank you for your intervention, opening and a point of view very interesting because it is rooted on the concrete activism, not on blah blah, but on concrete activism. Thanks very much, Kirti. Next will be Eric Villanueva, Institute for Popular Democracy, Philippines. Eric is a program director of Institute for Popular Democracy. Institute for Popular Democracy is a no-profit research and advocacy institute. It sought to maximize and broaden the emergent democratic space following the revolution by pushing for political reform, promoting pluralistic politics within the progressive and democratic movement, and helping build popular coalition to intervene in crucial political issues. Eric has been working on social housing along with urban poor for over a decade. And the Philippines is very important, it's very difficult time living in the Philippines, I know, because our comrade says under pressure. So please, Eric, present your thought, your proposal, your analysis, and your question to all the people. Thanks, Eric. 15 minutes.
Thank you very much, Comrade Cesare. Uh, uh, we're trying, we want to join the International Alliance of Inhabitants, as well as the other urban poor organizations in Metro Manila. I think in order to address the issue, the question, uh, we need to tackle housing as human right. So there has to be a very clear, at the national level, there has to be a very clear framework uh, for housing as a human right. It has to be recognized in the law nationally, and it has to be articulated as a legal concept internationally. Number two, there has to be some analysis of exactly how large the problem is. Okay, so how many people suffer from the lack of housing, from the lack of adequate housing, and of those people, how are they different? Because there will be solutions that are different. So there can be various solutions uh, which can be carried out by different kinds of institutions. Okay. Uh, and next, I think uh, when it comes to addressing sustainability or sustainable urbanization, I think that's mentioned also in the problem being posed. No, I think we should address the issues of not just community resiliency in the face of climate change induced catastrophes. We need also to uh, to tackle resiliency, sustainability, and safety in the face of pandemic disease and in the face of poverty-inducing and hunger-inducing economic dislocation, such as what we are experiencing now under repeated lockdowns in many parts of the world, including the Philippines, where lockdowns due to the COVID pandemic has created uh, so much hardships uh, to the people, especially the poor. Now, I think those are the considerations. And what I would like to share to you next are exactly what are our uh, recommendation or what we have been demanding the authorities here in the Philippines that they should do in order to address the issue of the lack of adequate housing. Uh, First, we are very insistent on what is already in the law. Zero evictions, zero demolitions, where people, where the informal settlers uh, do not yet have an alternative location, no? An alternative housing location, or if the concerned government authorities do not yet have not prepared an alternative location for them. Uh, Instead of what's happening now, the Philippine government suspended demolitions during the pandemic, but now they're bringing it back. They brought it back again with the easing of the lockdowns, and it was ordered by the Department of Interior that there shall be no more suspension. No? We find this very unacceptable, and everyone should condemn this government for this uh, policy statement. Number two, let community organization and people's organization propose their own housing project. So instead of just holding the poor or bringing them to faraway relocation sites designed by the government, let community associations and people's organization define their own plan, have that plan funded, no, and have that housing project as a result of that uh, of that process, no, managed by them and uh, implemented by them and managed by them. And of course, they need the support of different organizations, developers, builders, regulators, etc. Of course, financial, but it has to be uh, them doing the the implementation and governance and operation of their housing sites. And we are seeing this already, even in our in our case, no, community driven or people's plan, community driven housing or people or housing prepared or implemented under the people's plan. Okay, now, but this applies, this approach, I believe, no, at least I believe, this applies to community organization and people's organization that already have the capacity, organizational capacity to work together and to execute their plans. So the financial capacity should not be a problem. No, government should or whoever should be able to fund it. But the crucial thing is the organizational capacity of the urban poor to work together so that they can come up with their own plan and implement it and manage it. That's a lot to take for many different organizations. No? But when they say that they are capable, we support them. Okay? However, there are sections of the poor that are so poor, they're, they can't even maintain a functioning organization. They can't even organize. No? And so we say, house them anyway. Provide housing. So provide emergency housing. Provide housing for free. Provide tents or whatever. But invest heavily in public housing in which the rental is very, very small. Here we are already beginning public rental housing in which the rental rate is just $10 a month, 10 US dollars a month. That's barely, that's, how much is that? That's not 1 cent no, per day. No. So $10 a month, very small, no, just for the upkeep probably, or for some other types, or some other sectors, provide free public housing. So free public housing or very low rate public rental housing should be provided immediately for those who cannot afford to come up with their with community plans or people's plan for a more permanent housing. Okay? Okay. Now, let's go to the issue of connectivity and jobs and everything else and infrastructure. Whenever there's new, no, put up, whenever there's new development, no, design it in such a way that development is always mixed use. Mixed use not only in terms of mixed residential, mixed commercial, no. Mixed also in terms of mixed rich or upscale development and mixed socialized or low end development. So that, for example, in the train stations being developed by and supported and being supported by China and Japan, which is the North-South Rail project, the rail stations will soon develop. This will urbanize, no, very rapidly. Government should impose zoning and other regulations so that not only the big commercial and residential companies, the developers, will be able to take advantage of the land, no, but also socialized housing projects. So we are pushing for mixed use and transit-oriented development so that a poor family living just outside of Metro Manila or even farther from Metro Manila can commute on a daily basis uh, to to work in the city or to sell his goods, no, vegetable or fruits or whatever in the city on a daily basis, no, because transportation is no more a problem. And subsidized transportation, make make transportation rates efficient, make transportation very efficient, and make it very, very cheap so that the poor can come back in and through to and can go to the city back and forth very, very easily. That should be the whole point of transportation planning. Okay. And so that there will be little because in our case there's the impact on jobs and livelihood opportunities between a housing project located inside the city and located just outside the city, not very far but just outside, is very large already. Very, very the existence of opportunities is very sensitive to the location. And so if we could make a larger metropolis or a larger megalopolis, mega Metro Manila, mega police, thoroughly connected as possible, so that the movement of people is unrestrained or very easy. Then no, the urban poor can there will be less willingness by the urban poor to live in crowded inner denser inner cities. They can they can opt already. They can prefer already to live just outside or even further from Metro Manila for as long as jobs in the cities are acceptable are accessible. And that is a very important or a very important point in the whole struggle of the right to the city, the right to access the city for its jobs, for its services, for its everything that that's needed. Uh, and provide not just housing, but everything else, push for the adoption of everything else that will make uh, 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 that will maximize your new life in new housing that's adequate for you. I mean, universal basic income, social protection, universal health services, etc., etc. And then strengthen the accountability of government organizations that are financing or implementing. No, uh, in the case of the Philippines, it is thoroughly corrupt. No, uh, it has not changed. Maybe there were some improvement during the last administration, but it has gone bad to worse. No, and the Philippines remain a thoroughly corrupt country. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric, for your input and discipline. Thanks. But it's important not only the overview about the question, but also because you point out that we need a change of a paradigm. So, for example, you point out the question on public social housing. So, change the policy. Next speaker is Elisa Sutanudwara from Indonesia. Elisa is the executive director of the Rujak, I think, Center for Urban Studies, a no-profit think tank promoting co-production of knowledge and sustainable urban regional development in Indonesia. I know, Elisa, we met in Taiwan for the session of the International Tribunal on Eviction. Do you remember? Thanks, Elisa. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much, Cesare. So I will try to keep my presentation 15 minutes as advised. So thank you again to AEPF for inviting me. So I'm so glad that Kirti opening up with the land question. Then I suddenly need the urge, to add another slides because your first speech actually kind of like provoked me to adding this one slide and adding another issues on the whole presentation. Yes, I think it's a global issue now, the land problem, because apparently it's not only urban poor who need the land, but also the capitalism itself. So in this slide, I'm sorry, it's in Indonesian language. I tried to find the English one, but so it's about the high-speed rail train project, which is financed by a state-owned bank from China, about 5.5 billion US dollar. But at the same time, they want to build new cities along the way. And then this train is actually headed to nowhere as well, like because it's outside of Bandung, which is the fifth largest city in Indonesia. But to build the new city, it needs another money, right? 9 billion US dollar, which is larger than the project itself. So at the end of the day, the land value capture thing become like the issue here, become like the fuel itself for the capitalism. And also again, they also need land. So the people infrastructure like houses and also infrastructure project like transportation actually become a disguise for the speculation and financialization, in this case, for the global financial system. So it's not only I'm sure it's not only in Indonesia, but all over the world, including in global South. But at the same time, yes, the trend is kind of like rising, but try to, what happened? I cannot move to another slide. Sorry. Okay. But at the same time, we also saw that I found it. We also found that there is people also resisting globally as well. I think I have to play this one. Sorry for the. So like about 3 days ago, UN, a joint of UN experts, special rapporteurs, released a joint statement about a big project in Mandalika. It's in the east part of Indonesia. But what interested is, usually if you have the eviction, usually the UN special rapporteur of right to adequate housing is the one who respond, right? But no, not this time. This is one of the big project which is financed by half by AIIB, which is also attracted by financial institution and also by private institution as well to invest their money there. But as you can see here, this joint statement is, I think there are 5 UN Special Rapporteur. At the same time, there is a working group. So they combine, this advocacy also combining the global institution as well. In this case, the Office of Special Rapporteur try to fighting this global capitalism at the same time. So the civil society who report this, I give them like 10 thumbs if I can. Also try to raise the issue globally so we can fight because we in this fight together. So I guess this is a kind of like opening up the issue that we need to raise together. Again, the Philippine, Eric also mentioned it's important to have this, to work on this together as well. So again, I just want to give you a brief about what happened in Indonesia, which is also happening in other part of the world as well. So at the same time, I think this pandemic finally opened up an issue in Indonesia, that issue that never been talked much before, which is the rental problem or the homelessness. We tend not to talk about that because the homelessness kind of like hiding behind the surface. You know, not much homelessness, but we always have the issue about the crowdedness inside the house, and because of the pandemic, many people cannot pay rent. And usually those kind of things is a global north issue, but suddenly become Indonesia issue as well. But usually in the past, we are very difficult to tap into the global campaign like homelessness issues or about the rising rent issues. But now it's kind of like the whole thing working kind of like working on the same page as well. So I'm not sure that. I'm not sure whether other big cities in global south also facing the same problem, because I'm sure that the rental usually are not only provided by the government, but there is also rental coming from the landlord, like the private landlord, even private landlord in the informal settlement. But now it's not. It's become like the main issues here. Apart from the eviction problem, adding to another issue, including the eviction problem. So, but I don't want to only give you the bad example from Indonesia or the hopeful example, but also there is some progress. Even though I'm not sure whether the progress can be deep root or self or can be providing long-term solution, but it's a good sign, which is starting from a bit kind of like a transactional or adversarial policies in the beginning, because we, as you know, urban poor cannot really have a lot of choice if you want to tap into the how can I say political key leadership, unless you kind of like exchange them with food. So like these kind of things, like in Jakarta, like 6 years or 7 years ago, is quite common, like eviction everywhere. But urban poor kind of like have a political contract with one of the political leader, one of the candidate for the governor at the time, and somehow those candidates won, and now one by one, even though it's quite slow, affected kampung that have this political contract with the governor is it's kind of like seeing the kampung being built, their affected kampung being built. So for example, this kampung this is called Kampung Aquarium. Now they finally being built after 5 years after the eviction. So this is, as you can see on the first picture, is the Instagram post from the kampung residents, and the man in the middle of the picture is the governor overseeing the construction project, and on the picture on the center is the head of the community. And now they are on the last picture is kind of like anniversary of the eviction, like the 5th year anniversary. So it's not anniversary, but maybe more like commemoration. So this thing also come out again. Is it possible to become a model for the city, especially a city like Jakarta, which is a global city, which is also land always be the issues, which also there is a speculative issues as well, and then you cannot really expect on the urban planning side, because the urban planners never really favor those people in kampungs, in the informal settlement. So yeah, somehow it's possible, but then it's not really managed to be internalized within the local government. So, but during this pandemic, so this is the platform that opened up by Jakarta government. Some of you, I think, mentioned about the citywide improvement, right? Somehow, Jakarta government used this pandemic to open up a citywide improvement, but it's not basically coming from the civil society, even though civil society already being pushed government to do this thing. But then suddenly the government have this collaboration, social collaboration, big scale social collaboration for the kampung improvement, for the settlement improvement, which is a citywide. So they kind of like already identify which area that need to be helped, but it's kind of like shifting the state budget into the private. Because this is more like inviting donation, inviting organization to chip in their money, inviting the religious organization to also provide fund as well. So it's interesting. It's an ad hoc. I'm not really sure whether if we have a new governor if we have a new governor, that this program still be existed or not. But then again, like I said, that the change so far in Jakarta is not really regularized, or it's not really internalized within the government itself. So the way they're doing things sometimes is still like what used to be. So so I think that's the problem when we tap into the populism-based policy, and if you don't really change the paradigm within the bureaucracy, then it's difficult to instill the how can I say to internalize the new paradigm itself. So I'm not really providing a solution for this case, or solution for this case, but I'm open up for discussion because it's just for us here in Rujak is the tendency that coming during this pandemic also also can be utilized by civil society to improve something. But again, the window is closing. After vaccination, perhaps then we have to go back to normal that maybe that we don't like in the past. But then at the same time, there's a possibility to rekindle our uh, our our failure together here. But then um, but then to hope for the change is for us is will be really difficult if we have to do it based from the populism. And the process for the last 4 years after the governor that I mentioned won, it's quite difficult for us to make a structure change again. But then again, I'm here to learn as well. And happy to discuss as well. So I hope that we can work together for the as a global movement as well. Okay, thank you so much. I give you back to Cesare.
Thank you, Elisa. You introduced some key points, and especially how the government think about the development, change the capital, build a new big cities founded by international capitals in order to, and what means for the people living there to be resilient means accept that policies or change paradigm. So a question for you, but also for all the people. Thanks, Elisa, because it's important. Next speaker is Bipin Rai. Sorry, I have to point out that Elisa represents also the Wairu Commission. It's a very important network. Next speaker is Bipin Rai, Delhi Urban Shelter Improvement Board, Government of Delhi, India, and is a member of a Delhi City Government Apex statutory body responsible for shelter and housing improvement. He has ensured affordable housing for over 5,000 urban poor who have been residing at the different informal settlements of Delhi. Before joining the government, he has worked for over 2 decades on housing rights and have played a very important role in pushing the agenda of homelessness, housing, and urbanization at various spaces of civil society. In Delhi government, his role is to advise the city on housing policy and planning. So it's a very important different point of view for the government, but also engaged in housing right. Thanks, Bipin, for joining this panel. Thanks.
Thank you, all the panelists, and sure for our moderator. You have briefly we talk about from the beginning about the issue of housing and homelessness across the globe, and I let you know about before joining the government, I was part of civil society, and then our party was also part of social movement, and then after the social movement practices, we emerged as a political party, and we fought election in Delhi, and we own and formed the government in 2015. This is the brief about the about city government. I just try to explain the background of the new government. Um, I'm coming to the point, and first of all, I would like to share our government rehabilitation policy 2015. After the new government, we started working on rehabilitation policy, and we come up with a new policy which we try to study other state government policies. And we can say our policy is zero eviction policy, because in the policy we very clear about without rehabilitation we will no go for any kind of eviction. So we call this policy zero eviction policy. In the policy we also mention in situ housing. We prefer for in situ housing. And why in situ? Because we studied, and our past experience, people are migrating from rural area to other place, not for housing. They are majorly for livelihood. Housing is one of the human right, one of the major component for life, but livelihood is also one of the major component which we have to, when we form a policy, we frame the policy, we should consider those indicators. Then uh, we have what we have done, in every policy there is a cutoff date for eligibility. So we have changed the cutoff date, and we set cutoff date 1st January 2015, which covers most of the slum dwellers who are living from before 2015 in Delhi. So we try to accommodate maximum percentage of people, urban poor people, so that they can eligible easily, and they can um, benefited by our housing schemes. Then we have certain eligibility criteria which we have little. We did little flexibility. We have only two criteria. They have to prove only one certificate before 2015, and one of the voter list name in the voter list. And then the payment of, because in many of the housing projects we talk about affordability. In Delhi, we ask beneficiary only 112,000 rupees, which near about less than $1,500. So we try to uh, minimize price so people can easily afford. Even that, the people who are from the different category, like civil, scheduled tribe or scheduled caste, they have only to pay only 1,000 rupees, which near about 30 30 to $40. So these are the these are the main features of new rehabilitation policy 2015. Um, then we have a stock in our housing projects. I will tell about little about the governance model, because Delhi is a national capital, like Jakarta is national capital, and the governance of uh, level of governance is very difficult in Delhi. We have municipal body, we have one of the richest body, Delhi Development Authority, which comes under national government. We have municipal corporations, which comes under different agency, and we have Delhi state government, which is not full state government, but it's a union territory. So there are level of governance, and because because of level of governance, there are certain challenges we are facing. Um, we try to understand the land and the demand of housing need, and we mapped according to the land owning agencies. There are majorly six land owning agencies are in Delhi. One is Delhi Urban Shelter Improvement Board. Another is other Delhi cluster like Irrigation Department. Third one is Municipal Corporation of Delhi, and fourth is DDA, Delhi Development Authority, and fifth is central government land, CPWD and other kind of land. These lands are belongs to different kind of JJ cluster. JJ cluster we use for slum dwellers as a JJ cluster, and other agencies are also exist in Delhi. So what we are doing, we have right now we have a stock level available under JNNURM, and the stock of housing, we have 52,000 near about housing stock available in last 5 years. Out of 52,344, we have allotted 4,833 to different dwellers. So in future we are going to, because last year we have planned a major allotment to slum dwellers, but due to pandemic we extended because in between we cannot move people from. So we are planning in situ. Our proposed relocation strategy is in situ, which we are majorly we are planning in DUSIB land, which because why we focusing on our DUSIB land, because DUSIB comes under Delhi government and DDA comes under national government, and there are different political party and will. So we have to start our work from our available land condition. So we are planning 10,950 vacant flats, which we are going to relocate in different development projects. In situ, we are not relocating any household, but in situ we consider 0 to 5 kilometer, not more than that. Many of the projects which are going under like metro and other projects which expansion of national highways, so we need to relocate from some of those kind of particular area. So we have targeted 10,950 household to relocate due to this ongoing projects. Rest we have planned for in situ rehabilitation. Then we are also land pooling with DDA under in situ rehabilitation. Because DDA have major land in Delhi, and without DDA support, we cannot rehabilitate Delhi slum dwellers. So we are also in bargaining with, in discussion with the Delhi Development Authority. So, and third, because these houses are available, the stocks we have, central government, national government forcing us for affordable rental housing model. We are in a discussion with national government. We are giving in very small amount, in favor of very small amount. We are not okay with rental housing, but it's going on. What happened, it will come after our final discussion. Then we are also we need funds for EWS housing, because these houses are the cost of housing projects are near about 10 to 12 lakh for one flats, and we are only taking 1,12,000 from one family. So rest of the amount we have to mobilize. Some of the landowning agency, they prefer to provide funds, but some of agencies they are in denial mode. So what we are planning. We are planning for affordable housing for general public. So near about 40,000 house we are going to build in next 2-3 years, which will provide funding for other EWS housing. Uh, we are also government is planning to uh, these are the major discussion and projects which we are talking about in future. Uh, we have phase-wise plan to build uh, near about 90,000 houses for next 3 years in coming days. In first phase, we have planned for 30,000 house flats, and we have mapped the JJ clusters, families. We have done survey. And the final process we will be happen after the consultation with the JJ dwellers. Our target is by 2025 we will able to move near about 1 lakh people, 1 lakh family to provide them housing flats. So our next strategy is like the way forward is like we have inventory. We have to use our inventory to provide flats to maximum number of slum dwellers um,
Your mother.
to provide them a better uh, living condition. So and just a minute. So the proposed strategy is out of 7,620 EWS flats, we are at 1,144 flats in as per our policy. Balance flats will be provided to the nearby JJ cluster. In one of the case, I must want to mention due because when we talk about the housing projects and major uh, uh, right to city and housing for all and social housing, one of the incident happened in Delhi near Sakur Basti railway station. There was a big cluster, and railway did demolition there, and we our government uh, try to stop the eviction, but they are not agree with that, and they did eviction. From our side, we went to High Court, and we have fought against the railway, one of the government body, and we won, and court directed railway to uh, coordinate with city government, and if you have any kind of rehabilitation plan, uh, uh, you have to plan with city government. So these are the challenges of land and level of governance we are facing. But our strategy is to first we will cover our JJ cluster where near about 1 lakh family are living. When we achieve those goals, certainly the other agencies have pressure to uh, provide housing for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Bipin, for your overview about not only the problems but also some proposal for solution. Is a key the rehabilitation, the vacant dwellings, and the upgrading. The housing right means relocation, the affordability, etc. Title, but we should improve that with the policy consistent with that. When your president said there will be million and billion building of flats in the next few years, I think what is happening in India is not possible. But the struggle, and people like you and the social movement could realize that.
He he
Only,
can only he can only speak.
yes, only exactly. Speak and then bulldozer is not the solution. Thanks. Next,
Yes.
next is Layana Manandahar Lumanti Support Group for Shelter. She is executive director of Lumanti Support Group for Shelter, is a non-governmental organization dedicated to the alleviation of urban poverty in Nepal through the employment of shelter condition. Diana, the floor is yours. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to share some of my experiences here with all of you today. I'm here also representing Waru Commission. It's a network of the grassroots women's organizations. It's a global platform of the grassroots women's organizations and based in New York. And I am also part of ACHR, ACA project, as Kirti has spoken earlier. So the projects, the experience that I'll be sharing also come from the experience of implementing the ACA projects as well. Okay, so let me share my screen here now. Yeah, is it visible?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. Right. As Caesar has earlier said that I will be actually speaking, the solutions, the kind of work that actually we have done, although in a small scale in the communities in Nepal, in different parts of Nepal, in rural and urban areas as well, to help people, to improve their housing conditions. So the current scenario is the urban population is growing very fast. 10% of the people lives in informal settlements here in Nepal. 40% people lives in rental housing, then 60% actually in Kathmandu Valley. And actually, so you all are aware that we had a big earthquake in 2015, and there has been a reconstruction going on after that. But in the urban areas, only 30 to 40% achieve in reconstructions. That means all the people affected by earthquake, they have not been able to build houses in urban areas. The progress seems to be better in the rural areas, but then it's less than satisfactory in the urban areas. And there is a pressure and demand for affordable housing, but nothing much has been actually happened. But here I would also like to add what Kirti has earlier said in relation to land issues, because that is also growing scenario here now. Actually, the Nepal government has actually taken a very revolutionary decision to provide land to the slum dwellers, to the landless people. So the Land Act has been amended in 2019. Land Act was amended to provide land ownership to the slum dwellers. And following that, a commission to resolve the land issues of the slum dwellers has been established by the government. And so they have actually also formed committees in all the 77 districts in Nepal. So these committees are now actively gathering data, information, surveying the communities and collecting data about the slum dwellers and landless people. They have categorized the people living in the slum areas in 2 categories that I don't want to go into details now. But then all this data collection has been started, and hopefully if everything goes well, so maybe like in the next 12 to 18 months, the slum dwellers will be owning land. And the kind of like, demarcation setup is the people who have been living there for the last 10 years, they will be eligible to submit application for the ownership. So this is a very revolutionary step. When actually this discussion actually took place, we were a part of the decision, and actually we did not think that maybe this will happen, but then this happened. So the Land Act was amended, and following that, even the action was taken actually to get into action. So the action has already been taken. So everyone is hopeful. We are hopeful that actually people will actually own the land in the next 12 to 18 months or so. So saying that, I'm going to share, the projects that we, Lumanti has actually implemented in different areas of Nepal. The approaches that we have adopted in the implementation of the housing projects for the poor people, for the vulnerable people, the approaches that has actually worked out and successful is the community. It's a community-led process. All right, so we work as a facilitator and help communities lead. We have organized women through saving and credit cooperatives for creating community fund, and we have actually worked in partnership with the grassroots women's organizations, the cooperatives, in making people's access to the housing and other basic facilities as well. Housing, livelihood, wash facilities, because house cannot be only a house if people don't have access to livelihood and other facilities as well, right? So the community has to own, they have to understand the process, they have to be the leaders, they are, they have to be the frontline workers. And we, as a technical people, as a technical assistant, we can actually help people to lead the process. So this approach has actually worked out and it's very successful. We have partnered with the other stakeholders, including local governments and commercial banks as well, because we know that people don't have money and there's a lack of finance, and we need funders to come in to invest in the housing, right? It's not an easy task, but then we had actually partnered with few commercial banks, we had partnered with local governments, so we had actually brought money, made money easily accessible to the people to invest in improving their housing conditions. That has worked. And also we have leveraged resources from the local governments as well. So we actually do partnership MOU with the local governments and the commercial banks as well, along with the communities. And commercial and the local governments are happy to invest in improving the infrastructure in the community, whereas people can actually take loan to improve their own private individual housing. So even this approach has also been successful. Wherever we have actually worked in the municipalities, the local governments are investing in infrastructures. And we have always provided technical and financial assistance. That's what actually people needed, right? And that is also one of the, I think, important approach that need to be taken. So I'm also going to briefly explain some of the achievements, the successful projects that we have actually implemented. So this is the relocation project, Kirtipur Housing. The families living along the Bishnumati River, they were affected by the Bishnumati Link Road project, right? And those families, the government actually, the local government, they wanted to evict. They had even issued the eviction notice, but then we actually came forward and said, okay, eviction is not a solution. Maybe we can demonstrate something good. Maybe you can plan for the relocation. So we actually we actually worked with the Kathmandu Metropolitan City, and then we worked out a relocation project. So we successfully relocated the families affected by this Bishnumati Link Road project. And then the people, the land was purchased there. We had created a fund, Urban Community Support Fund. We also had a SCHR, STI contributing to the fund to support in this project, right? And then, so people actually got the 15 years long housing loan. So the houses were constructed there, but then in the 15 years, for the 15 years, the people have to actually pay back not the land was provided free of cost, but then only the construction cost of the houses, they have to pay on an installment in 15 years. Now it is almost like 15 years. I think it's already 13, 14 years now. And most of the families have already repaid the loan, and they are and the remaining families are still in a paying process, right? And so the land will be, we have worked out that, the land will be collectively owned by the community there. And so, and only the housing units, they will own. But then the land is the collective ownership. This is, I think this is the first planned urban relocation project in Nepal. And this is, we also regard this as a very successful project. We actually worked on another cooperative model type housing project in Pokhara, metropolitan city. All right. So this is the picture you are seeing. It's a Samabesi toll, and like this one, we had actually worked on 2 more this type of projects there in Pokhara. Right. So in this one, in this community, the Samabesi community, there's a 76 families living there. All these families, they were living in rental housing before. So we had actually worked, to get these families, people who have been living in the rental housing, but then who were aspired to have their own houses, but for various reasons, they have not been able to invest in land and housing. So there was a financial pressure on their part as well. But then these families, they are the migrants families, but then working in the city in Pokhara for many, many years, and who actually wanted to be a part of the city by owning a house, right? So we actually worked with them along with the partnership with the municipality and the commercial bank as well. So we this land was actually purchased, and we have actually done the planning and everything. So 76 rental families then actually moved and they own their houses there. And this is also 7 years period housing loan, and it's not completed, so people are still paying back the installation. And even the government has actually appreciated this, and this is a type of cooperative model, and they have appreciated, and there has been many budgets actually made to learn from these housing projects. And people also, so you can also regard this as an incremental project as well, because people slowly also, they have added second floor, and also a lot of improvements they have actually done later. We also worked on a rental housing, right? This is a rental housing. This is in Lalitpur, Tobi Ghat in Lalitpur. This has 24 rental units. And the design of the house, the design of this rental housing is done in consultations with the people living on, in consultation with the low income families living on rental housing. So the biggest challenge they were facing in the rental houses is a lack of private access to toilets and also wash facilities, right? And so those issues that they were facing in the current the rental housing, that was taken into consideration, and we have actually, built private toilet facilities in these units. So this rental unit is actually, this rental building is actually constructed to demonstrate to the government to make more investment on rental housing facilities, right? Because 40 to 60% of the people in Nepal are actually living on rental housing. We don't have a rental housing policy, and there are, of course, there are private house owners who are actually providing the 1 room, 2 room, 1 flat, to the people, but then there is no regulations. The access to facilities was not really given big attention. So there's always issues. So this we had actually constructed to demonstrate policy influencing, and the people whoever comes and live here, they really appreciate the facilities there. So it's so we also regard that as a very successful project. And right, we have also done a lot of slum upgrading, and a lot of slum upgrading actually also a part of the ACHR ACA projects as well. While we do the slum upgradings in the slum communities, we have partnered with the municipalities, because in the slums, people they don't own land ownership. So it's very challenging if you don't own the land ownership, because you have to again take a loan to improve the housing condition there. So we have actually worked with the local governments and taking the word from them, commitment from them that this community will not be evicted, right? So that means taking that commitment from the community, from the local governments. We have worked with the communities, and communities are happy with the commitment given by the local governments. Although local government has no authority to issue a land ownership document to them, but then local government has actually ensured that whenever there is a process from the national government to issue ownership document, the local government will always come forward and support to the people. So with that kind of commitment and understanding, we have actually worked in a number of municipalities and help people to access better housing facilities. We also worked on the recovery and reconstructions after the 2015 earthquake. So immediately after the earthquake, we actually reached out nearly 6,000 families, and helped them to build temporary shelters because many people actually completely lost their house and they don't have a place to live. We also actually reached out a number of families to get rental housing units and supported them to provide the rent amount as well for a few months. But then, so we actually supported the families, worked with the communities, worked with the women's groups and cooperative to have these temporary shelters. And after the temporary, after we also worked on the reconstruction projects as well. So we worked in the number of municipalities in the rural and urban areas, helping people to rebuild their houses. Right, and we also had to advocate with the local governments and with the NRA to introduce a community-led process in the reconstruction process, because that was lacking at that time, and also kind of communal procurement to introduce that kind of system. So it's actually, we are not building one house, but then we are actually building the communities that will contribute it. This communal procurement process will contribute in the community building. We adopted cluster-based reconstruction. We also promoted the use of reusable salvaged material so that actually people can contribute in a low budget, because the support from the government was only less than $3,000 to build a house, which is a very small amount to build a house. So a lot of work has to be done on that part to make it within the budget. And also we also actually supported for infrastructure, improving infrastructure, and also helped in planning land pooling in some areas as well. So we also got engaged, and I think it's nearly about 1,800 units we supported in different areas for reconstructions.
Sorry, Layana, but the time is a tyrant.
Okay, I'll be
sorry.
okay, almost finished. Okay, then we also worked with other low-income housing communities in partnership with cooperatives and banks, right, and provided technical assistance. And we got local governments to invest in infrastructures. You can see the pictures of community-led, where communities get together to do the design, understanding the housing concept, retrofitting that can actually fit for the budget of the people as well. And we also actually worked with the poorest people, who actually cannot take loan, who actually need a free housing support, right? So those families also, we have identified we have identified together with the municipality, local governments, and also the women's organizations as well. So those families, the poorest, they were identified, and they were actually given, we even mobilized local governments to provide housing facilities for these families. So currently we have actually reached about 130 families, the construction of the free housing for the poorest 30 families in Kalaya. Actually, it's going on now, and people are also building this interlocking blocks to build their house, and this is going to be free of cost, where actually municipality shared about 25 to 30% of the total cost. Municipality is actually supporting the poor people. So we have also tried, came out with various approaches, to reach out the poorest. Right, okay. So this is what we have actually achieved done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Layana. Sorry about the time. Very interesting, important. You highlighted that not the public-private partnership, but the people and public partnership could propose and implement a solution for housing rights policy. So next step, please, Chandan, can you read the list, the question to the panelists, and then each panelist should have more or less 3 minutes to answer.
Yes, sure, Cesare. I mean, there are so many questions, there's so many comments, but I'll just sort of read out the questions, sort of directly addressed to some speakers, and some questions are in very, very general in the nature. So I'll just read few, and maybe panelists can also decide on what question they want to reply. So Edna Pasporte is writing solutions or alternatives question mark. In absence of the land use policy plus new liberal policies and practice, how? Another question is from the Ping Pham Pulme. To all the panelists, how can we solidify our forces for an empowering and community-led socialized housing for the poor if the state is adamant on providing national housing budget? A couple of questions from Roland Weibel. Let me just read out few. So can affordable public housing feasible and successful under a neoliberal economic dominance? I think Eliza has already written that. It's an interesting question. She might be interested to reply. And there are some questions like anonymous attendees, which I'm also going to read. So one question is specifically for the Philippines. So Eric can reply. What was the rate of displacement and eviction from living space in Philippines during COVID-19 pandemic? Another question from anonymous attendee is that, is there any need of land audit in cities where narrative has been set so that lack of land availability by the nexus working for grabbing the available resources, especially land? And Huma Umar, she's writing, seeing the global economic crisis and pandemic, how can the issue be resolved? Question mark. And Anand is addressing a question to Bipin. Can you tell that how many slums come under the Delhi government where you are doing intervention directly without any interruption, and total how many slums are in Delhi? Very quickly, a couple of more questions. So Anju, yes, 3-4 questions for Lazana. Yes. So what is the what do you mean with the leveraging? You use leveraging in one of your slides. And then Anand is writing to Lajana, can you share about the distance between previous place and relocation site, especially for the Kirtipur housing intervention? And I've also read about Anju already that do the people living the Kirtipur project have access to loan through a house mortgage, especially since they do not own the land? Also, can these families have the right to sell their units? So that's the 2 questions, 3 questions to Lazana. And one more question from Lee Oswald to Lazana. For what was the process to get commercial bank to support these projects? What is the interest rate for the loans? Is this cooperative model projecting the house and land from being sold on the speculative market? And I think your colleague Sri is also writing to you, Lazana. Can Lazana share how grassroots women are part of the initiative that she shared? So these are the questions I can read, and the rest are the very general comments. Thank you, Cesare.
Thank you, Chandan. I'd like to only point out my question to all the panelists, very brief. Faced with the failure of neoliberal policies on the city revealed by the COVID crisis, can we continue to proceed as in the past? That is, without questioning the paradigms, the foundation of urban extractivism on rent from land and real estate? Can we keep repeating that cities need to be resilient? That is, the inhabitants quite simply need to adapt to changing ways of living and working without questioning? Can we say that 5 years after the UN Summit Habitat 3, it is just a matter of implementing the new urban agenda more seriously? What is the direction we want to take in Asia and globally? Would it be wise to leave the new urban agenda and take different paths? Thanks. 3 minutes each. Who take the floor to begin to reply to the question? Diana.
There, I can actually, answer the questions that have been posed to me. Yeah, shall I go ahead? Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, the leveraging, huh? There is one question on leveraging, means leveraging resources. See, we have actually created, I will just give one example, Urban Community Support Fund that we created in Kathmandu, actually also in other cities, also in 2 or 3 cities as well. There we had actually in the fund, so that fund is actually established within the municipality, and we had that fund, we also from the donors, whatever the fund that we had actually received from the donors, also we are putting that money in that fund, and we have actually requested municipality to top up, so that means municipality, so with that fund we have been able to leverage the resources from the municipality, because municipality is now every year putting the fund in that urban community, urban poor fund, right? And this urban poor fund has a separate management committee. It's a different from the municipality. So municipality doesn't make a single decision on the use of that fund. And the fund, that fund actually loan is actually provided for livelihood, for housing at a very low interest rate. Right, so that's how we have actually leveraged the resources from municipality, and also for the infrastructure also part, like when we are doing actually housing projects, so in municipality is actually putting on spending, investing on improving the infrastructures, like improving access to wash facilities or whatever is required there. Even access to land as well, in one area, in access to land as well in Kalaya it's happening. So that's how we have actually leveraged. And the question on distance, okay, the community, the community where they had been living in before in Kathmandu, it was Vishnumanti Link Road, and where they were actually relocated is only 5 kilometers distance. So from one city to another, actually, from Kathmandu to Kirtipur municipality, it's actually 5 kilometers. And a right to share, right to sell land or house, right? So yeah, they will not be owning land, but then they own the house. So the mechanism that we have actually worked out is, if they want to leave the house for various purposes, if they want to sell the land, they can actually sell land to the committee there. The committee will actually purchase the land. This is not only this is actually not only in Kirtipur, also in Pohra, the same mechanism. The committee will purchase the land and will again sell the land to the poor families, to the low income families, right? Not really being like direct kind of like selling business, but then like they can sell to the community. And there's one more question on the commercial banks, how we are working with the commercial banks, right? We have actually, when we actually first started working with the commercial banks, then that was actually not very easy. So we wanted to bring the banks to make investment in the poor people's housing, but that was not very easy at that time. So we had to actually put a guarantee fund in the bank, right? And then, so whatever the fund that we have actually put, the bank will add on 20% more on that. So it's an 80-20 concept. 80% fund is a guarantee, and bank will add 20% to give the loan. Now, because this is going very successfully, now we are actually working on 50-50 concept. So there's a guarantee fund there, and on top, so if you put a guarantee fund of 50% of the total project cost, then the bank will add on 50% from their part. So that's how we have been partnering with the bank. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, but please share your PowerPoint. Next, please, Kirti. Kirti, may you begin to reply? Do you have 3 minutes? Thanks. You have a lot of.
Let's come back on the larger issue of urbanization, and I think it's rather unfortunate that this meeting we didn't address those issues very much, the larger issues of urbanization. Both because in the context of Asia, it's very, very important, and especially in the context of South Asia. There are several parts to this particular issue, and I just wanted to come back in the context of not only housing or land, but in the larger context of governance. One is this, that and once again, I'm not really kind of taking the wider view of South Asia. I'm just taking the a limited view of Indian urbanization. That and just look at the demographic pressures on our cities. We were just about 50 million people in cities, 50, in when we become independent in 1950, and we are talking about something like 840 million people in 2050 in just that's 100-year span. And if you take a shorter time span, can
Please
you hear me?
load, please.
Can you hear me?
Better, load. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
yes. Okay, it's fine.
Yeah. No, so what I was saying was this whole enormous amount of demographic pressure. Uh, and I think that's a pressure which question that we need to ask is this, that are we, in the context of governance, in the context of resources, in the context of planning, in the context of management, are we really able to manage it? Like say for instance, if India, which is about 370, 380 million people now, becomes 840 million in 30 more years, are we really equipped to handle it? So that's a question to ask and answer. Now, if you really kind of then start looking at land, or if you then start looking at housing, how are we going to manage it? So the first thing that comes to my mind is this, that if you really have to kind of deal with the problem in the context of this large pressure that we have, okay, we will have to kind of think very differently. I don't think conventional ways of dealing with issues is going to work. And I think what are those new ways? I think that is the whole battle that we must engage in. And what one is saying is this, that we are running this 60 event webinars on India's urban challenge and rethinking India, basically asking this question, that conventional ways will not work. New technologies, new ways of thinking, new approaches will be required to be found. And it's very hard even to indicate what those approaches are. What one can say at this point of time is this: we require new and different approaches.
Thanks, Kirti. Great. Eric, you have the floor to reply. 3 minutes.
Kirti mentioned about big ideas. I think we need to deploy some big ideas as well. Um, it is said that there are some problems that are so big, nothing less than total or global cooperation is necessary. Slavoj Žižek says, there has to be communism when it comes to climate change. I mean, and but on the other hand, I think there isn't a single model that works for all. There has to be a different models. So the neoliberal model definitely would have to go, no? But the private market model for those that can really afford housing should still be there. The problem is the increasing number of people who can't afford it, no? And they can't afford it exactly because of the disparity in wealth because of the neoliberal model. So maybe we should adapt something practical about uh, when it comes to housing and abandon the neoliberal model. So even the socialized housing program in the Philippines is premised on recovering the funds, no, so that it can be still be used for the next cycle of housing. We have to abandon that for a lot of people. We have to provide housing for free for those who cannot afford it. We have to provide rental housing for those who can minimally afford housing. We have to uh, to push for housing in which tenants are under obligation to lease purchase, meaning rent to own, or still another layer or segment of the poor. So different approaches would be necessary. I just would like to ask about the question on COVID. I think public housing policy will have to change because of the pandemic. The government shouldn't allow housing units that are only 24 square meters in size. No? with no room for improvement or for expansion upwards to the second floor because the foundation is not very shallow. So uh, enough room for every family member, enough living space as a change that we must adapt because of the pandemic. Yeah, I'm exact, right?
Great, Eric. Thanks. Next is Elisa. The floor is yours. I suggested to the panelists to reply to the question and answer also in the box if they are some reply, some comments. Please,
Okay.
3 minutes.
Yes, I will try to answer about is it possible to have affordable public housing in a neoliberalism era? Actually, yes, it's possible, but the problem is how, like our government, they really try to speed up the process of building public housing using Singaporean model. Basically, it's a vertical housing everywhere. So it's very possible to build it, and even by using a developer's money, you can use the land value capture because we have a TOD regulation already. So it's possible, but how? Because usually when you're talking about how, that's also there's also victim as well, and usually it's all urban poor. So so if the answer, if the question is possible, yes, the answer is yes. But that's not how we're going to do that, because it's always become a problem, a burden for the urban poor and also for middle class as well. So and in relation to that question, actually, I and my answer, I want to answer about this. How can we solidify our force for empowering and community-led socialized housing for the poor if the state adamant on providing national housing budget? Because it's quite somehow related to the neoliberalism question. So I'm in my organization also part of the HCSR advocacy, which is a collective housing advocacy. But for Indonesia case, what we're doing is not proposing collective housing advocacy to the government of asking them to give us budget. So we use this campaign, the global campaign started by ACSR, not asking for the budget, but for asking for the government to let us be, just let us be solving our own problem. Just don't disturb us. So, like for example, you just give us easier regulation for the community to build housing by themselves, because it's as part of Indonesian tradition. 60% of the housing, actually, I think almost 70% actually provided by our own. So it's part of the tradition already. So you just give us the freedom. We don't need the money. We can probably solve the money by ourselves, like used to be, and then that's it. So somehow it's become a discussion between three different ministries: Ministry of Planning, Ministry of Public Infrastructure and Housing, and Ministry of Agraria and Spatial Planning. So let's see whether this kind of try to shift the paradigm, not asking for the budget, but asking for the freedom. So yeah, that's all. Yeah, so yeah, I think that's my answer for now.
Thank you, Elisa. Thanks. Next and last is Bipin Rai. Please, Bipin, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. I do agree with what Kirti started after our discussion, and this is the major question. I also sometime we also thought and discuss in the government. There are many policies. There are many um, success stories, and few of the government try to achieve the goal, try to facilitate urban poor. But sometimes we felt we need uh, more kind of uh, success stories and ideas which needs to support each other. We also like when I was activist, I was travel throughout India, and I was trying to understand and establish the issue of homelessness and right to shelter. And I found there are different discussion between different civil society organizations. There are confusion between affordable housing. So we need to discuss in on those questions, and I'm also thinking, I'm not asking answer to anyone, but these are the actual question which we need to discuss in future forum meetings. Sometime our friends discuss about affordable housing, and I asked them, what is affordable housing? What is your views on affordable housing? And we are very we are unable to understand what they exactly want. So we need to think practically what is feasible. A government which try to provide housing need to civil society organization, government, public partners to understand and think what model can be created, what ideas can be created, and that can be implemented on ground. That's my point on Kirti. Secondly, uh, because we all emerges through a campaign and movements, we are to believe right to city is equally eligible for every section, not for certain particular people. They are enjoying city life, and the service provider are coming from out of the city, and they are giving just I'm finishing. So these are things which are which are uh, which we need to discuss. There are two questions about one is how much uh, slum cluster on Delhi government land. It's 176 cluster on Delhi government land, and there are 70,000 households are living on these clusters, and total areas are 443 crore, 443 acre, and central government land clusters are 499, and there are near about 2,37,000 families plus households are living on those clusters, and they have 1533 crore 1533 acres land. So these are total cluster are 675 in Delhi as per government record. And there was another question about the reservation on uh, rental housing. There there is no reservation on rental housing. We just try to understand how to implement. There are 48,000 houses are vacant in our government, but the regulation of those rental projects, how we can go ahead. If any success rental housing scheme or idea, if any have, please pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Bipin. With you, we finish all the, for instance, for the moment, the answers, the comments. So please, Mina, for your remarks and about next steps we are proposing in order to improve, to following, to implement the dialogue and hopefully the mobilization in Asia and at the global level.
Thank you, Cesare. This was an extremely interesting because, as someone said, there's a lot of practical knowledge here and a lot to discuss about more. I'm sure everybody has questions which still need to be addressed. I know I have a lot of questions which I have not yet asked. So we are going to repeat this exercise, and we would like to focus on Asia, try to build a kind of loose network of debate and discourse on housing, on all kinds of housing, whether it's rental, whether it's ownership, whether it's leasehold, whether all kinds of, on the question of land, on what constitutes decent housing, what constitutes a decent habitat, What about public services? All these issues we would like to address in a series. A lot of you are already doing these discussions, but on an Asia level, if we can all come together to talk more, the AAPF is happy to do a bit of this hosting. And during the AAPF 13, we definitely would like to do a roundtable, an international roundtable on bringing together experiences. As everybody knows, models are only in terms of generic ideas, but definitely learning from each other has proved very, very beneficial. I like what Bipin said right at the end. We would like to know more about rental housing in other parts. How was it done? Because these kind of things definitely help each other. So while they may not be models, they are definitely experiences which are important for us to learn from, to understand how to solve problems in our own country. So that's all I wanted to say. We will be back. We have your emails. We will be back. And if you have no objection, you will be asked in the email. We can set up a listserv on which we can continue the discussion. If you don't want to join the listserv, you are at liberty to say no, but we will put all of you into a listserv. If you agree, then you can join it if you like. That's all I wanted to say. We'll be back.
Thank you. Excellent, Meena, about your synthesis, and also because you open an working group and opportunity for all of us to follow, to implement this dialogue in the region, but in connection also to the global level. The ASEAN-Europe cluster, people forming a cluster, is very important for all of us. So please, let's go ahead. There are different thinking, different approaches, but if I well understood, all the people is willing to change direction, not to follow the past, the failure, the neoliberalism, but an alternative. So is in our hands. They are bad. We are the good people, but we needed to stay in solidarity together to win. The post-war is in our hands. The post-war against COVID, but against the neoliberal policies for an alternatives on housing and right to the city. So thanks. I would like only to invite you to participate the next meeting in very few hours, the 5th session of the Virtual World Assembly of Inhabitants is about the zero evictions and vaccines for all the people. So I think all of us, you have received the invitation, but I can send to you the links in order to stay connected. Okay, thanks again, and in solidarity.
Thank you, Cesare.
Thank you, Sri.
Thank you, Meena. Chandan,
This whole idea of how
Chandan, take a picture.
I think this whole idea of Asia-centered, Asia-focused discussion is a good idea, because I think there is so much to learn from each other. There is so much is happening in areas where other places not things are happening. Like so, you're absolutely right that on mental housing there's so much to learn. So for South Africa, Latin America is concerned, there's so much to learn in the context of slum improvement, in situ upgrading, and so especially focused, I think conversation will be exceedingly useful.
Yeah, and we will invite others. We'll invite people like Cesare and others who are interested in Asia, but the focus will be on Asia insofar as the discussion is concerned. Yeah. So we are not leaving out Europeans or anyone else, right?
Yeah, thanks. Good, thank you.